What's up, everybody? I'm the human monster truck, Perry Von Vicious, and I wanted to share with you a little project I've been working on. I've done a few different iterations of this over time, and this is one in particular I started doing because a frequent viewer of my live streams, Bobby Gilbert, had kind of an idea request on something he wanted to do with one of his favorite monster trucks. And I thought I'd show you. So if you collect monster truck toys and in the year 2025, you probably have some that look a little bit something like this. These are two examples of when Hot Wheels was making Monster Jam trucks. There are, of course, the Spin Master Monster Jam trucks, as well as the Hot Wheels Monster Trucks toys that are licensed through Bigfoot. And these are great toys, but they're not the toys I grew up with. The toys I grew up with had a very specific style. I grew up with the Matchbox Super Chargers. These were the original mass-produced 1/64th or Hot Wheels Matchbox scale monster trucks, and they had a very specific shape and style to them, cartoony tires, a stance that was very reflective of the time, a very simple chassis design, which also would have been reflective of monster trucks in that era. These came out in the mid-late 80s, 1986, I believe. These are what I grew up with, and I started some time ago making my own little chassis for these that could have modern monster truck bodies on them. You're seeing here, I'm showing you a Bigfoot model that I made that has a little driver in it, there's a little cab, and even a little engine. It didn't take a whole lot. So what I thought I would do today is design one of these and show you how I do it. So I've done previous videos on how I made the entire chassis from scratch. I'll link that in the description. But for right now, why don't we hop into Tinkercad and I will show you how I take a chassis like this one or this one, my sort of base level chassis, and how I customize them so that they can have the body from one of these monster trucks on it. Specifically, we'll be looking at an Avenger body, very similar to this one.
So the Tinkercad process is pretty simple. I have my basic chassis that I've created here with the dually tires, and what I'm doing first, you see I'm adding here a couple of holes. These are for the body mounts, and in a second you'll see I also add two little slots. Those are for the rear body mounts. This is so I can take the Hot Wheels or Spin Master body and I can mount it on my own custom chassis. It's really important that it fits correctly. I use a pair of digital micrometers to get these numbers exactly right so that the size of the holes corresponds to the specific pieces on the original body, and that the spacing is all correct so that the body sits right where I want it on that chassis. You want the wheel wells to line up with where your tires are, etc. And this part can be a little bit tedious, but it is worth getting right. All right, and what you see me doing now is I'm copying that top plate with all the mounting holes from my chassis. And what that's going to become is the base for the upper part of my build here. That's going to be the part that holds the cab and has the upper part of the body mount, which is what I've started constructing now. The upper part of the front body mount is made to look like an engine. And the reason I do that is because you need something to hold the body up at a good height so that it looks correct on your little chassis. But the part you make for it is going to be a little bit visible. So I take advantage of that and I make a little engine, because on an old school monster truck, that's exactly where an engine would be. Now, of course, this engine won't be super visible, but you will be able to see it a little bit. So this is where you can get a little creative. I take a little artistic license here. What I'm making is pretty obviously not an exact replica of an engine, but it's more a cartoony artist rendition of an engine, which is pretty in line with what would have been on these trucks in their era in the late 80s. So you'll see I start using some little pipe pieces here, some little tube pieces, and I'm kind of adding some detail on the side of our main chunk of our engine here. And I am doing a lot of copy and pasting, and then I will take all those pieces and I will copy paste and flip and move them where I need them. And this is a great way to create symmetry when you're making something that's supposed to look like a machine. And again, you're not going to be able to see this super well, but I do think it's a neat little piece of detail for your toy. And keeping in line with that idea of adding little details, and the fact that I can take some artistic license here, I'm going to go ahead and take that same adjustable tubing piece in Tinkercad, and I'm going to start designing up some exhaust headers, colloquially referred to as zoomies. Now, again, taking careful measurements on the toy's body, I can make sure that these will not be in the way of anything mounting the way it should, but that they'll also stick out of the body and be visible. So now I'm actually adding to the model with this. So I'm taking something that would just be structural, and I'm making it a part of the art, if you will. And of course, keeping in line with the idea that this is for 3D printing, and I do these on an FDM printer, I know that these little pieces, they print a lot better if you can make them chunkier and bigger. So what I do is I need 4 of these headers coming off each side. So rather than just having all 4 of them with space in between them, I'm going to make them kind of thick, and I'm going to make them all touch each other so that, in effect, they become one big piece. You can see here I'm getting the lengths correct, making sure that all looks the way I want, and then I start copying, and I set them exactly where I want them. Now you see they're one big thick piece. Now I'm going to copy that, I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to bring it to the other side, again creating that symmetry that you need when you're making something that's supposed to look like a machine. Moving on from the engine, we need to make a cab, because that's going to be visible, because we're not putting a windshield into this monster truck. It's going to be open, and you're going to be able to see in where the driver should be. So the first thing I'm making here is a little dashboard. I just used a little cube, and I rounded the edges over. Then I've taken a sort of basic driver shape that I downloaded from Thingiverse. A lot of good free files there. And I'm scaling it up to be about the size I think it should be. That blue dot is where I believe the driver's head ought to be. And so I'm just finessing all of this to where I think it makes sense. And now I've gone ahead and added in a very small cylinder and rounded it over, and I'm giving him a little steering wheel in his dashboard there. Again, taking my time to get the shape and dimension of it all exactly how I want. There is there's sort of a gesture you're creating here. These parts are going to be pretty little, so not all of the detail will be totally visible just because of the sizing. But I still want it to read the way I'd like it to. I want it to feel right. So getting these little details is worth taking the time. Now I've gone ahead and I've copied that front dash piece back, and I'm using it to create the back of his seat. But I want this to be old school, like bucket seats. So what I'm actually going to do, you're going to see right here, I go ahead and I take that piece with all its rounded over bits, and I'm going to shorten it down real little, and then I'm going to copy that all the way across, giving it that texture of an old school bucket seat. Then I'm going to copy that whole piece. I'm going to lay it perpendicular, put it underneath my driver, and now we have the bottom of his seat. And it really reads as an old school bucket seat. Pretty happy with that. Now, of course, you got to see what it all looks like put together. And I think it looks pretty good. You know, there's a really nice feel to how this reads. I think it looks cool. And you can see how it's going to sit as a piece. You could honestly have this just like this without the body. But let's go ahead and print it off.
All right. I've gone ahead and run off the chassis, as well as our little plate with the cab and the little engine on it, and they're on the printer right now. Let's go ahead and pop those off. All right, these are looking good here. Got our little build plate. I'm loving this new build plate because this little steel, just a little bit of some bending, and the whole thing is just ready to come right off. Just that easy. Almost no cleanup to do on the build plate. And then just magnets back in place. Love that. Absolute simplicity. Let's get a closer look at these parts. All right, so I've got our parts here, and you can see there's some little bits kind of coming off here. That's all just what the printer uses to adhere these parts to the bed while it's running. And this has very little, I'm not even sure if it'll show on camera, very little support material that it needed. And I can just pop it right off on both sides. This is what happens when you specifically design your parts with 3D printing in mind, and you know what the printer needs to make it work. All right, and just like that, no support material left. We've got our little guy here, our little driver, our little cab, and our engine. That's looking pretty good. Now, the chassis itself has a little bit more in the way of support material, but it should all come off pretty easily. All right, so here goes our sort of just rough fit test for this. This is the body we're going with. Bobby's a big Avenger fan. So we're gonna go ahead and line up. You see these pegs in here line up with the slots here. So I'm just gonna drop that on about where it's gonna be. And you get sort of a little bit of the look here. You can see the engine. You can see these pipes here. You can see the driver on the inside looking pretty good. I think that's all pretty promising. And then on the chassis, I have the exact same holes and slots. So I'm just gonna gently drop it into place. And that's sort of what we're looking at for a dry fit. I'm real happy with this. We definitely could do something to the front, but I'm gonna leave that as is for now. And yeah, so next we're gonna hop into some painting. I'm gonna do that on a live stream, so I'm gonna throw in the clips of that here.
So the painting process is pretty simple. I don't get too complex with it because a lot of these details you won't see under that little body. That said, I do use some fairly cheap materials, and this is largely because they do as good a job for me in this instance as the expensive stuff. I use a simple craft paint that I'll either get at a Walmart or at a dollar store, and paintbrushes also from the dollar store. And I just take my time with it, go nice and slow. If I need multiple coats, I'll use multiple coats. And here you see we're getting started. I have just some sort of fire engine red. I've darkened it in with a little bit of some black, and that's just so that we can get a nice little old school upholstery look on this bucket seat that we've made in our little cab. And you can tell, even with that inexpensive craft paint, the coverage is pretty good. I don't go on too heavy with it. And yeah, the process is pretty quick. Now, of course, that's a fairly bright color going on here. And, there are some other colors that are a little more challenging. As I move in here with some metallic silver, again, just cheap craft paint. And you can see I even use a Dollar Tree cup to mix it and old grocery bags to cover my desk. So again, cheap materials, don't have to break the bank here. I come on here and watch the difference this makes. It makes all the difference in the world on that little engine that we printed. You get some silver on there and suddenly it just comes to life. I often hear Adam Savage say that getting the primer or getting the paint on a model when you finished it is really when it comes to life for the first time, when the shapes are no longer shapes, they become the object you're trying to show. And boy, did I feel that when I was painting this up. I think getting that silver on here really makes a huge bit of difference. And what's nice about that silver is it's so reflective, it's so bright that once the body's on there, even though the body does cover up a fair bit of that little engine, you can tell it's there because the light catches it as it peeks inside underneath the original body. And yeah, this was I enjoyed the silver. It did not need a second coat. I did have to do a second coat on the red on the chair, but the silver on the engine was a one take. It did the trick on the first try. And as I wrap it up here, you can really see that is looking really good. It's a huge improvement over how it looked before there was paint on it, and that's a big deal. Now, moving on to the chassis, you can see here I'm hitting some green in these rims, really trying to add some contrast. The green took 2 or 3 coats because it really doesn't, especially on the black surface, it doesn't give you quite the coverage you'd like to have. That said, it looks really good on camera. It kind of on camera read like it only took 1 coat, but it did take 2 or 3. And honestly, that's fine for me. I don't mind that too much. I've joked that I make toys for a living because I realized it was something I'd just be doing anyway. So a few extra coats is no big deal to me. Now here I'm hitting that sort of BKT style lettering on the tires that I added. This says PVV. I'm taking a fair bit of white paint on a short bristle brush, and I'm just pushing it down into the indentations of those letters that I created. And then I come back over it with a paper towel, and I wipe away the excess out on the tire, and later I'll blot a little black on the outside, and it comes out really clean. And here you can see we're going back in. We've got some green here, not the same green as the tires. The tires have a sort of metallic green. This is more of just a straight bright green. We're going in at our driver because he would be wearing a fire suit, and he'd be wearing his signature Avengers helmet. The old Jimmy Kohler, if you've ever seen him on Monster Jam, he's a bit of a legend, Mr. Excitement himself. And yeah, I wanted to pay my dues, make him look right. So here I'm just giving him a bit of some green. And with the last touches that go on him here, you can see our sort of upper chassis, our cab, is all looking pretty good. And that's it for sort of the painting here. And I can kind of put the 2 pieces together, and you can see that it's a nice fit. They look really nice. So the next step here is going to be a quick one, because all I do to connect these is use a bit of some super glue. Oftentimes I'll use Zip Kicker because it gives me a stronger bond, and it's a little faster, and I am a little bit impatient. On this particular build, I don't believe that I bothered because it had time to cure. So here you can see I'm actually putting the body on the top of our cab while I push this down on here. That's not gluing the body in place, but what that's doing is giving me the spacing that I want for it. I'm just making sure that it all sits just the way I want. Again, taking your time with these steps is really important. Make sure that everything's exactly how you want it, because you want the end product to look really good. And I'm so pleased with this. All right, so I have the final product here. My little BKT style lettering on there with these dually tires. The engine looking good on that front. And if I spin them around here, you can see our little Jimmy Kohler in there with his red fabric bucket seats we designed. Looks pretty good. Rolls freely. It doesn't look like it does because this is a weird surface to roll on. But yeah, looks good. Looks great. And I'm gonna pack this up and send it off to Bobby Gilbert. If you enjoyed this video, I don't drop this often enough, but go ahead and like and subscribe and share it with a friend or whatever. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna cut to the end slide here. Thanks for checking us out.
Hi, I'm Perry Von Vicious, and I'm a human monster truck. Vroom vroom. Buy my merch. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And make sure you catch my Twitch live stream.